And we're back. This is Cyberview. We're here for this week's episode to cover some really exciting and large topics for you. I'm Frida, and I'm here with Carlos and Gerald. We're really excited to get into today's topics. On today's episode, we are going to cover three main topics. First will be Biden's new executive order that tackles AI risks specifically. The next will be Microsoft's new AI-powered assistant. And the third will be talking about Okta's recent breach.
So we saw the White House is preparing for an AI-dominated future, and President Biden issued executive order that urges new federal standards for AI safety, security, and trustworthiness. We do believe it will probably face quite a few issues around defining the guidelines for AI developers and so on. But what's interesting is to see what the future is like for AI.
Well, I mean, we all saw this coming. AI is, of course, a very good tool, and there's a lot of uses for this, but it's completely unregulated. And we were discussing about this a few episodes ago. If you haven't looked at it, just go for it. But really, we need to have some control on where this data is coming from, what this data is used to, and so on and so forth. And it's very important to have that. On the other hand, legislators are normally not the best ones in terms of AI, artificial intelligence, or IT in general. They tend to oversee a lot of things, or they tend to make it so that it's so complicated to get, for example, a license to use artificial intelligence in this case, that only the big players are going to be using it. And also, besides that, there's big companies that are lobbying there in order to get their game rules into the law. So it can get a little bit complicated very fast, especially when we consider that the big players that are into this game, like Microsoft, and now actually, I think yesterday even, X with Elon Musk, draw their hat into the game. Yeah, they have enough money to start drawing it everywhere and start making their own rules, their own laws. And that will be very hurtful for the small companies, small startups that wants to also have a piece of the pie.
Definitely, Carlos. I personally actually salute Biden for this. I think this has definitely been coming, right? Because we see, as you mentioned as well, we talked about AI tools itself, and it's been on the rise in terms of conversations, in terms of individuals using it at a personal level, companies using it. We see enterprise solutions coming out with AI integrations of some sort. So I think that type of leadership from Biden and United States is actually great. It's good for the industry altogether. And to be honest, we just needed someone to go ahead and of course, a lot of issues will come out of this, right? We talked about how to manage that AI, certain policies around it, then who's going to govern it itself? How do you draw up those policies? It's one thing to sign an executive order, but now we need to implement it, put that order together, what is going to look, what is going to involve, and so on. And of course, the goal and the promise is to manage the risk of AI, which is absolutely necessary and is needed. So I think I see what US is doing. They're looking to lead the way in terms of managing the AI and legislation itself, especially the privacy concerns and civil rights of individuals and companies and so on. So definitely great move. And we'll see a lot of issues and talking points around there. Now we get to that point of the hardship itself.
Absolutely. And these are topics we've discussed in the past. So for instance, national public health and safety and how AI can affect that, privacy. And then, of course, I'm sure Biden's very much thinking about national security and national economic security. So training the model and having red team or some kind of red team do the penetration tests and safety tests is a very good thing. It's extremely complex. I'm really curious how they'll keep up with the regulations there and continue to set policy and follow those policies. But it's overall extremely good to have these kind of regulations into place. Right now, for example, a hacker or someone doing malicious activity can gear even ChatGPT or Bing or something that's not Worm GPT that we've discussed in the past to write an effective phishing email. And it shouldn't be able to, right? But there's ways around it to train the model to do what you want it to do. So that's specifically what they're looking at, the government is looking at to prevent.
Yeah, but on the other hand, for example, if I were to act as a malicious actor and I will get an open source project, train it for myself and use it maliciously, who is going to police that? Exactly. I mean, that's another thing, that who is going to be tracking this type of individuals?
I wouldn't be surprised as the world progresses forward to artificial intelligence growth itself, and it's going to just get bigger. I believe it's going to end up forming an industry of its own. I wouldn't be surprised if we'll need to have a legislature just focusing just on that, the governance of it, right? So a governing body just around that. I think that will definitely be required, because one thing is to draw up the policies, but governing of it, right? The requirement for the organizations, fair enough, if you are a malicious person or company, right? So you don't even adhere to any of the legislature governance, right, itself. So you will try to avoid all of it. But then for legitimate businesses, right, where the AI implementation and use of AI tools itself is going to be the big focus here, right? There will be requirements for those companies as per the executive order itself, and as the guidelines will get drawn up, right? So the extra testing and reporting itself, the research, because we need to, as per the executive order, we need to make sure that there's no algorithm and discrimination itself in that order is outlined. There are other things like new privacy research and rules that aims to better govern how developers use that information itself. As we see at the moment, without rules, anything can do whatever they want to, even though there could be some policies set in terms of not using AI for malicious activities, like Worm GPT, for instance. But the way that developers will be able to use the AI tools, or shall we say, can use the AI tools, they will have to provide a lot of information back to the governance. So that's going to be interesting to track, because we saw kind of similar stuff with GDPR in Europe itself when the law came out. And obviously, the lawmakers are not IT scientists, right? They don't really understand the privacy. They don't really understand the IT infrastructure itself. So they put up the laws and required for the right to be deleted, for instance, in the internet, in the web. But then the complexity behind it, how to be deleted in the cloud infrastructure itself, it becomes almost impossible, especially for archive data that goes pre-GDPR era, right? Where there were no ways to actually track every single data point itself, unless you delete the whole lot, which could affect millions of users rather than just one user's information to be deleted. So yeah, the government came up and drawn up the rules that aren't necessarily effectively implemented or can be executed. So I think here with AI governance itself, that's one thing that we need to avoid. Whether we can avoid it simply, I don't think so. And I think that's where another big talking point comes up, is actually the government utilizing the assistance of the organizations, right? It could be Microsoft, it could be any organization that tries to lead the way in AI. They will probably be advising government. Well, some companies are already, right? And how do you avoid the bias from that particular organization to, where they set the rules and guidances that maybe could benefit that particular organization one way or another? So yeah, these are big issues that could be arising just from the executive order itself, or the laws around the AI also.
Exactly. Yeah, it's super fascinating. And to your first point in particular, Gerald, there is currently no consensus. There's no regulation on AI and who should be doing that and how it should be enforced. So I think that's why this topic is so important, right? Because it is really important for different countries and regions that have different regulatory frameworks to come together and kind of make sure that we are using this technology in a responsible and ethical manner, no matter what. And GDPR is actually a good example, because we saw that with GDPR. We're still seeing that, right? The US had to have better privacy regulations as a result of that. I love that.
We all agree that it's a great initiative, it's needed, but I think there will be a lot of flaws and issues that arise from it, which we rather face those than avoid the topic altogether. Will Microsoft's new AI-powered assistant define the future of work? That's the big question that we have today. Microsoft does not hide its plans from dominating the enterprise adoption of generative AI tools, artificial intelligence, and now it has officially launched AI-powered Office Assistant called Copilot. So it's only available for enterprise customers now, so it's not that easy to get your hands on it at the moment. But it is interesting to look at the future and the angle of the Copilot. So would that be the future of the workspace itself, and especially for the Microsoft customers?
So just like Google has their AI, which helps with the Google Suite, it can help you write documents better, it can help with your emails, etc. Microsoft has now come out with their version, which is called Microsoft Copilot, and it's an AI for their Microsoft Suite. And I'm really excited about this. I think it'll be a useful tool for the average customer overall, especially as I see it helps with compliance and regulation there, and checking on policy, which of course is going to be extremely important as we delve into AI more, and it's ever more complex. So really excited about this tool for Microsoft and their suite to kind of help people out and bring things together. What do you think?
I feel like the AI conversation is going to creep up pretty much every episode we do. And this is going to be the massive talking topic for years to come, I'd say. And I just wanted to say that this wasn't unexpected. Obviously, they launched the demo and they had beta customers already. It's good for the industry to make sure that every major vendor tries to implement some sort of AI tool, because ultimately it does help the workforce to eliminate certain admin work itself. So, for instance, with Copilot, I saw the intro video, what it does and so on, and it seems promising, right? It seems promising in terms of assistance around the Office suite itself, with analyzing documents, implementing with the emails, and being able to do PowerPoint presentations for you, and that will be able to pick up the information from Office documents or files that you put together. So it's definitely going to be helpful. It does raise certain questions around security, but again, that's another benefit that Microsoft disclaimer that Copilot will enhance the security and compliance side of things when it is being utilized. Big question for me is obviously calculating the value of AI tools is going to be very tough, especially for smaller organizations. Because, for instance, with Copilot, we saw in the release article itself that it's only for enterprise customers at the moment, with minimum commitment of 300 users at $30 per user a month. An enterprise license is already run around, $50 per user. So you're adding additional, 60% cost on existing per user license cost. And if you look at smaller companies, who's going to be able to commit to that type of cost, it does rack up. And now you lock yourself to one vendor as well. So it just complicates matters a lot. But it is Microsoft. So apparently the prediction that they're going to reach close to 7 million users using Copilot next year alone. So Microsoft will definitely implement it and dominate the market with their own tool. Because, Office is one of the leading tools, right, the companies use.
Locking into a provider locking, it's quite a topic, especially in bigger organizations, because at any given moment, for example, as you mentioned, it's 30% more. Maybe a big company will okay, fine, I'm okay with shelling this amount of money. But you never know if, I don't know, next year, now that the 7 million users are already reached, they decide, okay, now it's not going to be a 30% more. It's going to be 50 or 60 or 80. Now all your workforce is already using this tool. All your processes, all your workflows are already using this tool. It's going to be quite complicated to start migrating into a newer tool. Before we were talking about Office suites, which, you can kind of migrate into, for example, Google Workspaces, and it's practically the same. But if you are going to migrate from AI tool to AI tool, that's a completely different topic. So, I mean, we do have some kind of like vendor agnostic tools. We can take, for example, ChatGPT, which has a lot of different plugins that you can connect into one or the other. But of course, it's not going to be as good or as compliant as something that is made specifically for the vendor that you're using. So it's pros and cons everywhere. And but I think it's too early to determine if it's something is going to be good or bad. My advice will be, for example, if you want to use it, just use it with caution. Don't integrate it too much into your business workflows, and see what happens. Maybe it will. The more users there are, the lower the cost will be, because it's going to be more profitable to have more users rather than a bigger license, or maybe not. It's just a matter of waiting a little bit.
I agree with those points, but that's not just an AI problem, right? This is like a SaaS issue. This is capitalism. Sorry, I'm going off into the weeds. But, this is why I still am not a huge fan of Dropbox to this day, because that's exactly what they did, right? Like, oh, now that you have all of your data in here, we're going to raise our prices by a lot. So you go with us or you get out, and it's extremely difficult to migrate your data out. I'm looking at this really naively at the moment, and maybe this might be good for the average bear who's not a cybersecurity expert to elaborate on. So I'm looking at this kind of like, you remember Clippy back in the day, the paperclip that would help you write Microsoft documents? This is like Clippy on steroids, right? So it's yes, AI has a database in which they're storing all this stuff. And I know we're going to keep talking about this, and I hope that we do in each discussion that we have, actually, because that is a concern, how that's stored for many reasons, right? But for this, in order to keep yourself safe, quote unquote, or keep your stuff private, or prevent that your data being like taken by this tool, so to speak, I would say use everything that the AI says into your own documentation, right? So like you still have ownership over Microsoft Word and Excel and all of these pieces of documentation. So that's where you're really using it. If it's just this tool that's retaining all of this data and you're not pulling policy from it, then yeah, I think that would be pretty useless, and then also bad and concerning for a number of reasons. But yeah, that's my naive view at the moment. But Carlos, like, absolutely to your point too, we just don't know. Like, we don't know how this is going to go. There's many cons and pros. I'm really trying to be as positive as possible about this stuff, but from a security perspective, it's very confusing.
Conversations like this, I think, comes in very, very handy and helpful, because let's be honest, no one knows how to really navigate the future industry of AI itself, where it's heading, what's going to happen, and so on. And I think having those conversations and trying to learn together how to navigate it, that will help us shape and understand it together.
My first thought is like, good. If Microsoft can become something prevalent with not just Microsoft, go for it. I would be so curious to see that. My dream as a naive, IT manager, again, is like, can we just be friends? Can't Google and Microsoft and Mac and Windows, like,
not in a business world.
The way. Hold on. No, you're right. That isn't how the business of business is business.
It's capitalism. It's making money, right? Not to make friends. Like you want your customers to be happy, but the shareholders come first. So talking about another cyber incident, which sadly we almost have new incidents to talk about on a weekly, monthly basis, but we don't see this to be changing anytime soon, unfortunately. And the big one that we're going to cover is going to be Okta. So Identity and Access Management company Okta disclosed a hack of its systems. And they came out, they did say that Okta had a breach that affected, was it 134 of their customers out of 18 plus thousand customers they have. And unauthorized intruders, they gain access sometime from around 28th of September and had the access up until pretty much mid-October, 17th of October. And what's interesting is that the intruders gain access to the tokens that could be used for session hijacking, and particularly those tokens that they gain access to associated with HAR files, which basically tracking the login of the web browser's interaction with the websites. So it's quite big vulnerability, and interesting article came out as well outlining that Okta is actually blaming the recent incident itself on an employee who actually logged in to a personal Google account on a company managed laptop. So it's a very interesting sort of topic to dig into and the reasoning behind it. But what's interesting from my perspective also on a business side of things is the impact it had. So obviously in terms of the number of customers who was affected is not necessarily a huge number. But I do have a couple of talking points around this that I will like to outline and get your input, Frida and Carlos. And one of it is obviously going to be the business impact itself, where we saw that over $2 billion US dollar being wiped out in the market cap itself, and they closed the market share itself being down but just over 8% when everything came out. And then also in my mind, another topic that talking point I like to hit on this as well, just to be mindful, is does that set a precedent for cyber criminals? And what I mean by that is, isn't it easier for cyber criminals to actually go after big boys of the industry that have access to more customer bases rather than going after one customer? Because basically with one cyber attack as such, right, that's cleverly done that we'll discuss more about, the cyber criminals gain access to 134 customers. And out of those 134 customers, apparently 5 active sessions got hijacked. And some of those customers are 3 being named. One of them is being 1Password, Beyond Trust, and Cloudflare. And all of those customers obviously had tangible damage done as well. And other 2 customers not really publicly mentioned yet. But yeah, what are your thoughts on this, Carlos, Frida?
9 years ago, around when I started out in IT, the company was going to go with one login. And I was like, no, don't do one login because they just had this massive breach. And as an identity provider, it's very bad, right? So
yeah,
Okta was just coming into like greater popularity. And so we went with Okta, and obviously they're the leading identity provider, and they've been around for a while now, and they're really heavy in the space. It's just, these companies feel pressure when there's a breach to have an explanation of, okay, here's what we're going to do, right? Here's the solution that we're coming up with so this never happens to us again, right? And we discussed shareholders earlier, and it does have to do with that. It's like, how can we give you comfort to know that we're working on this and we know what we're doing, right? And that this is how it happened, right? So I want to discuss how it happened, because that's really important. And I want to discuss session hijacking. But the solution they came up with here is like, okay, no employees can log into their personal Chrome anymore. You can't, and this is something, and this is where as an IT manager, I'm a bit concerned, because I am really huge on Chrome profiles. I love Chrome profiles because I tell employees, this is how you keep your personal and your work separate. If you're logged into the same Chrome browser with your personal and work email, there's times when Google will get that wrong and it'll switch to your personal, like for instance, right? Or your stuff is truly not separated. If you have different Chrome profiles, you have separate bookmarks, you have your history retained, blah, blah, blah. And the thing is, so using 1Password, right, which they do, and I love 1Password, this employee added it to his personal 1Password account. So that's how this occurred, was that they went into the personal Chrome profile via session hijacking, and they were able to access a service account that was in his personal account. So I'm going to stop there because I've said a lot, but I do want to go into what that means and how that might not actually be a good solution to lock it down where it's like, okay, you can only use a company account and that's it, right?
Yeah.
In theory, that's great. In practice, that's not how it's going to go. I think there's going to be even more issues with that, combining passwords.
Yeah, and the situation here is not even about okay, yeah, we have the session hijacking and we have situations where, okay, I'm going to log you out of your personal account, but that's just a symptom of the bigger problem. If you were to get into a computer, no matter of what computer, of what organization, of what user, it could be a support guy or girl, or it could be the CTO or the CEO, you shouldn't be able to escalate horizontally like they did. Once you get, okay, you hijacked my session. Okay, you can only access this very small amount of data, this very small amount of the things that anything else will be behind, not even single sign-on, but rather like two-factor authentication, biometrics, and so on. One single-use password, YubiKey, whatever you think about it. The thing is that, yeah, blocking that is not going to solve the problem, because if some attacker find a way to get again inside of any of their computers in their organization, they're going to escalate horizontally again. And that's something that we can't afford. I mean, yeah, just answering like, hey, okay, let's block accounts. That's not going to solve the problem. The problem is there. The thing is that you need more segmentation of your network. And you need more control of who got access to what and what can be reused if it gets into the wrong hands.
I agree. Well, let's go into service accounts really quick then. This is something that I have an argument with all the time in IT, especially with software engineers who don't understand, like, Frida, why can't I just share this account, right? And it makes things so much easier. And there's many instances in IT where I have to use a service account, right? It'd be impossible to share with my direct report, right, in order to access the same thing. But this is why we gear toward, and security people say, it should be an individual account. It shouldn't be a service account, because there's only so many ways you can go, horizontally with an individual account. Plus, we have logs. I know, it was me who went in and screwed up this thing in the back end, right? If it's a service account, I don't quite know. And I guarantee you that's also why Okta, has just come out with how this occurred. Because it's a little bit, it's not a good look, as you say. Yeah, for that reason.
Well, they want to take responsibility of their own shoulder, say, well, we've done everything right, but then, one employee did something that is unadvisable, and that led to this particular attack. But I agree. I think this points out vulnerability itself, because even taking that session token, how long is session token active? How long does it normally stay active for?
It depends on the configuration. I mean, you can have it for 5 minutes and you can have it for 1 year or more.
So that's exactly. So that's my question, because session tokens, right? So you can set how long you want it to be active. So maybe that outlines as well another potential vulnerability where session tokens are too active for too long, right? And it's interesting because I saw one presentation around session tokens itself and how easy it is to actually hijack a particular network, for instance, if you gain access to session token. And some session tokens stay active for a very long time, and by literally a clever hacker getting their hands on a session, they get access to the full network. So it is a massive vulnerability. And I think many of us use Okta or like Okta, so I'm just hoping that it'll be silver lining for them to actually start paying attention as well to vulnerabilities and securities around that. But what about the, like I've mentioned, around, of course, the business impact is massive. We talked about it, but what about the precedent for the hackers? Frida, you mentioned the LogMe hacks and all of that, and now we see with Okta as well. Is this something that hackers might be sitting back and thinking, oh, wait, this makes a lot more sense for us to have a stronger attack going after providers as such? Or is it too risky, too hard? What do you think?
Oh, yeah. If I was an attacker, if I was going to attack, this happened at Meta all the time. It happens at large companies all the time, where it's just like, okay, what can I target to get the most information and most movement into what I need.
Yeah, and following just on that, just a little bit more, just as there are like petty criminals that are okay with getting $5 from a bag somewhere, and there are also multi-million-dollar like bank thefts. There's also a different type of cybersecurity, like hackers or malicious actors. So yeah, on one hand, a lot of big ones are trying to reach this type of like Okta or Google, Cloudflare, and so on and so forth. But for the people that think, well, if hackers are going to be hacking someone, it's going to be hacking the big leagues, no? I'm a very small business owner, and they're not going to attack me. Well, yeah, but it's just like a hacker is going to attack MGM to get millions of dollars. Doesn't mean that a small time hacker, but probably it's like, I don't know, junior high school or in high school, just to get $100 extra from for gaming or whatever, they will try to attack you as well. So you need to be also vigilant. No, there is not like only big leagues are attacked as well.
It's interesting because you say that. That's how organized crime being formed, right? From moving from petty criminals into organized crime, where you decide, okay, actually, not going after those $5 or $10 or petty crimes itself, you organize it and go after big bucks. And that's what we're seeing now as well with that revolution in IT and obviously in the cybersecurity and AI tools assisting with that as well, where suddenly now we see organized crime, massive organized crime from negative side of things, right? Affecting larger organizations, where before we used to see a lot more smaller hacks. Now we see a lot of bigger ones. That's it for today. The episode has been brought to you by NordSecurity. It is a recurring series, so we hope to see you again on our next episode.